Trying to understand dissociation can feel like an impossible task. You know, dissociation can come in many, many forms. And for a lot of people, and for, I'm going to say, maybe 50% of cases that are in clinical settings, I guess I should say, most people experience dissociative amnesia or some form of dissociation. Now, as I discussed in this video right here in the previous video, I think it's important to understand dissociation on a spectrum. It's only when you understand it on a spectrum that you begin to understand exactly what's happening. There are those people on the very mild end of the spectrum that may dissociate or detach from reality, maybe driving home during a busy day, or maybe coming down emotionally after an argument. That is more of the milder end of dissociation. Even people who say they have blacked out during really high, intense emotional moments, that is on the lower end. But what's on the more severe end of the spectrum would be dissociative identity disorder. So what I'm going to focus on today in this video is more of the middle ground, which would be dissociative amnesia and the various kinds of amnesia that you could be experiencing. I'm also going to highlight a few things about dissociative identity disorder, and I'm also going to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and the dissociative subtype that you may not ever have heard of. But first, let me go ahead and briefly introduce myself in case you are new. My name is Tiamra, and I'm an internationally and board certified trauma therapist. I'm also licensed in mental health, and I specialize in treating children, teens, and families, as well as adults who are dealing with trauma. Let's jump in. So when you understand dissociation on a spectrum, it begins to kind of reveal itself in a way that you can understand even you a whole lot better. It's only when dissociation is, poorly identified, or we rely 100% on incorrect movies and data, that we become confused and overwhelmed. And sometimes we're even afraid. We don't know what's going on, right? When you're going through a dissociative process, especially when you're relying on people who are not experts in the field, you're relying on movies that may be a little outdated and not as researched as it should be, or you could be relying on your own experience of the dissociation and labeling it incorrectly. So it's important to know exactly what you're dealing with. So I encourage you after this video to go back to this video right up here and check that out, because I really break down dissociation and specifically dissociative identity disorder. But in this video today, I want to highlight some things with dissociative amnesia. Now, a lot of you are familiar with amnesia, right? You guys know what that is. You know what to expect. You know that amnesia is a loss of memory, right? You know that it's basically a process that can either be recovered from, or it's going to be with you for quite some time. Sometimes, amnesia, the general sense of amnesia, sometimes it doesn't heal. You lose those memories that you once had, or you never regain the ability to store memories. A lot of our memory, as I talk about on this channel quite a bit, is centralized in the amygdala if it's an emotional memory, and the hippocampus if it's a memory that needs context, which of course we always need context, right? That's how you know that your emotional memory of Disneyland was fantastic, but you were on a ride, and you recognize from that memory that, I think I was on the roller coaster when I was laughing the hardest. That's the hippocampus giving you some context behind that emotional memory. But in amnesia, things are deadened, things change, and it's really hard to go back and bring that information to the forefront. So what happens? Well, either you can do things in your life that can trigger a memory and therefore all your memory comes back, or you're going to go throughout the rest of your life without that memory and maybe only experiencing bits and pieces. Now, for dissociative amnesia, there's a couple of things that a lot of people don't know about, and that's because this is a complicated topic. So I'm going to highlight some of these things, and maybe you can pinpoint which one you are. I think the first thing that you need to be aware of is what's called localized amnesia. Now, what happens to you if you have dissociative amnesia with localized amnesia is that you have a really hard time remembering a specific time. So an example of this might be Let's say that you had a traumatic event that involved you being sexually assaulted. You have a hard time really recalling, I should say, that memory at that specific time that the abuse happened, or the trauma, or the sexual assault. You can remember that you were assaulted, you just can't remember what time, what day, what was going on. So that specific period of time is lost for you. You have absolutely no idea what happened in that moment. I'm sure you've seen this in movies before, where the person can, hear themselves talking. They can maybe smell smells from that moment, but their memory of that specific moment of being traumatized is completely gone. So localized amnesia is forgetting a specific time, specific event, a specific place. The next one is selective amnesia. And basically what this is you can recall some events, but not all. That's one of the most perplexing ideas that my clients struggle with. And that's simply because it just doesn't click very well with a lot of them. How come I can remember, everything that happened leading up to the trauma, and yet I can't remember the actual trauma? Okay. And what happens with selective recall is that, your brain basically checks out when there's a memory of something really traumatic, and it only gives you bits and pieces. It's like, a whole pizza, for example, and instead of giving you half the pizza, it only gives you a corner, and the brain chooses and picks what it's going to remember. And so that's really complex, but also very frustrating to people who have dissociative amnesia. I can remember everything up until that specific moment, and then my brain recalls what it wants to recall. Generalized amnesia. And basically what happens here is, there's a loss of information of your whole entire life. You have an inability to recall anything that happens to you. That's why it's generalized. It's a traumatic situation that, impacts your mind in a way that you dissociate so much that you can't remember anything. And storing memories is really hard. You can't remember what you did yesterday. You can't remember if you cried yesterday. You can't remember if you cried last week. You don't even know that person over there that sees you every day of your life. It's like waking up to a new world every single day. Now, I won't say that I had a client that was like this necessarily, but I did have a client that had dissociative identity disorder, and I talked about her in my previous video on DID. She was 8 years old, had a trauma, 10 years old when she came to me, spent 10 years after turning 10, spent 8 years, I guess I should say, really struggling with DID. And when she hit 18, she aged out of the system. Well, I don't want to say she had dissociative amnesia, generalized amnesia, but I will say that there were times that she would come to the session as if she was speaking to me for the first time. And I think it's just because, she had this amnesia or this forgetfulness around people and identity and herself and the world. She wasn't keen on the time and day unless you would remind her. So that's not specifically generalized amnesia, but it's very close. And so if you have generalized amnesia, you are likely to forget every single day the things that you've come in contact with, the person that you saw at the grocery store, your mother that just spoke to you, your child that just said, "Hi, Mom." Maybe you washed a load of laundry and you wake up the next day and you look around and you say, "When did I wash this?" Right? It's like this complete loss of awareness. And every time you go to sleep, it escapes you. The next thing is systematized amnesia. And this means that you lack a specific category of memory. Example, child abuse in your history. You absolutely forget that ever happened to you. It's a category in your life. You forget that it has happened, but you can remember everything else. You forget about the category of trauma, but you can remember everything else. You forget about the category of child sexual abuse, but you can remember everything else. It's systematized. Okay? Some example of this would be, I have a memory of going to graduate school and being successful, but I have no idea when I became a mother to a child, right? Or I know that I'm a part of a family, but I don't remember that family member over there. Remember that dissociative amnesia is a traumatic experience. So whatever memories were laid down in your experience, or whatever memories your hippocampus held on to in other regions of the brain, it doesn't matter. You're not going to remember like you should specific categories in your life. I don't remember that family member over there. I don't remember having an extended family. I know I'm a part of a family. I just don't remember being a part of that person over there. Okay? Or I don't remember when I became a parent. I just know that I've existed. I just don't remember when I specifically became a parent. That is systematized amnesia. Systematized amnesia. Now, there's continual or continuing amnesia. And that is when you store a memory, whether that's a logistical memory, right? Person, place, or time. You know math, you can calculate things, you can cook, you can, order things in your life, right? Whether it's that or it's an emotional memory where, I remember going on a family vacation and really enjoying myself. I remember being sexually assaulted by my cousin or my niece or my nephew, right? So you can remember those things, but continuous amnesia is this. You create a memory in the moment or at some point in your day. So many hours later, you totally forget it. And it's not as simple as, I forgot what I ate this morning. It's continuous. You forgot what you ate this morning. You forgot when you put your pants on. You forgot when you buttoned your shirt. You forgot when you took a shower. You forgot what you did just 5 minutes ago. It's like a brand new experience continuously, okay? This is so complicated. So I'm going to post some articles in the description box below for you so that you can clearly understand what's going on here with these different kinds of amnesia. See it on a spectrum again, guys, right? Dissociative amnesia would be like the global theory, and underneath that theory are all these things, okay? Now, let me highlight dissociative identity disorder. Did you know about 70% of individuals diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder also is at a high risk for suicide? A lot of people fail to realize that. It's not just I change into a different person and, I struggle in my identity, but I'm fine. It's I struggle in my identity. I struggle to know who I am. I struggle to know who you are. I don't know when I'm switching in and out of characters. I'm very emotionally distraught. I feel lost. I feel confused. And now I'm suicidal. 70% of individuals with dissociative identity disorder are suicidal. Now, possession form dissociative identity disorder. The DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, has listed in the chapter of dissociative identity disorder, possession form dissociation. Let me break this down. Now, possession form dissociation is this. It may be more of a religious or cultural perception of DID, of dissociative identity disorder. Basically, at the foundation of possession form dissociation is the idea that your body has been taken over by a ghost, a deity, or a demon. You may see this person's face change. You may see their strength get more intensified. You may feel hair stand up on your arms or neck because of the presence that is there in the individual. You may even believe wholeheartedly that an exorcism is needed in order to reach this person and help them. Possession form dissociation. It is listed in the DSM-5. Now, a lot of people may feel like, oh my God, please don't say that, because now I'm going to be self-conscious. That is not my purpose in mentioning this. My purpose is to help you understand with all transparency. Is that right? Yeah, transparency. What is in the diagnostic, book and the clinical book that we all utilize. And in some cultures and in some religions, demon possession is listed. Let me know in the comment section below how you feel about that, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, But there, it does exist. And there are people who believe in this. There are religions that believe in this. There is cultures that believe in this, And so it's important for me to mention that. Now, let's go to PTSD, the subtype of dissociation. So here's what you're going to notice. If you're diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, it is often common for you to also experience on a spectrum, to experience a form of dissociation. That doesn't mean that you have a full-blown form of dissociation. It just means that, your PTSD is, displaying all these subtypes and symptoms of dissociation, but it doesn't mean that you actually need to be diagnosed with dissociation. You are likely to experience derealization and depersonalization. Now, depersonalization is like a detachment from yourself, and it's like experiencing yourself walking in a dream, It's almost like you are an observer outside of yourself. Derealization is the intensified feeling that you are walking through a dream, that you are foggy, that you're nebulous in your thinking and in your mind. It's also unreality. That's a word right here that we hear a lot of, unreality. And it's like your existence isn't real. Okay, so these are the two subtypes that you are likely to experience with PTSD. This is a tough topic, guys, and it's so controversial, especially when, clinicians bring up possession form dissociation. But it's important to understand that does exist in some situations. It's also a complicated topic because of all the different types of amnesia that you are likely to have. So let me know in the comment section below if you've had any of these experiences. I welcome you. Thank you so much for being with me today in this video. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful, and hit that subscribe and bell button so you know every single time I post a video. I'll be back with more interesting videos. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.